Welcome back. A little lots of technical difficulties today. Anyway, let's get started because I have a bunch of stuff I want to talk about, and let's get started. So, welcome everyone. Happy July. Happy 4th of July weekend. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got to see family, had a good time. And don't have a ton of stuff today, so I'm going to just get started pretty quickly with some good stuff that I was supposed to upload, but we're going to get started with some upcoming episodes. So let's just do this in a way that where you can see everything. Let's just go back to me and hope everybody can hear me. And let's get that off the screen. I definitely need to invest in like an A10 mini or something like that. So interesting. And then I have some like something scrolling that I don't know why. It's just scrolling. All right. So that's the first item of the show. Let's see what we're doing on count. Yeah, Frank Milburn is he's legit. He is definitely legit. Now let's see if I can still do any. Actually, let me show that. That is definitely true. Let's see if can you see my chat window. All right, good. You all can see that. I can see that. All right. Whew. What a crazy production. I had all sorts of technology failures. I have this like remote control for Sony. It just doesn't work. I replaced the battery and it doesn't work. It worked when I replaced the battery, but the moment I put it away and pulled it back out again, it doesn't work. So I got to figure out what the issue is with that. So all right. So the next thing I wanted to quickly cover is state of the channel, year to date revenue, all that kind of stuff. All right. So now I got to set that up really quick because I was not on the ball before all this. Um, Let's see. And okay. Wow. Google Chrome is not being very kind to me. It has like some other profile I never use, you know. All right, we're not going to use Chrome because Chrome is failing, like big fail, massive fail. So let's see if I can use. And we'll go to June. Okay. And all right. I'm hoping you all can see that. Yep. Okay. All right. So we can start from the top. So, starting to make progress, but it's slow, and you can kind of see January is when I was monetized, and it kind of has these peaks and valleys. These peaks, by the way, are typically driven by some sort of super thanks or something like that. So that's kind of what's driving that. But it's generally on an upward trend. Since we're only about a third into July, it kind of doesn't really matter at this point. But in terms of, let's see, I'm trying to see if there should be something about, um, which page ads. Yeah, so this is the playback based CPM. That's actually pretty good, especially for the content that I'm producing, which means I think it's a measure of quality. So anyway, I'm not going to spend any more time on this in particular, but I thought people would just, be somewhat curious. I'll also do just a quick overview. Whoa, I've never seen that before. Huh. Well, I guess there's always something new. So I guess when you do monthly, this is what views look like. This month was driven almost entirely by Ryan Macbeth. He basically shared one of my episode or two of both my episodes on his community tab, and it drove massive traffic. So, and then I think I had like 3 slightly down months, and then we're back up again in June. But I think there's also some seasonality to this. So anyway, this is kind of how I'm doing on views. Watch time is pretty crazy. Um, I didn't even know this did subscribers. So again, February was really good from that Ryan Macbeth. So we're getting there. I hope to be at the end of this month to 2,000 subscribers. I'm still targeting for 10,000 by the end of the year. I don't have a ton of control over that, but it is what it is. All right. So I think that's bored people enough with that. So I'm going to jump off. Okay. Of course, I didn't prepare for this at all. So, all right. So, current projects. So, I finished my novel. That's the good news. At least first draft. The bad news is it's still only 75,000 words, but I write pretty tight because I'm generally a short story writer. The other unfortunate item about it is I have a tendency of doing projects that ultimately become true. So, the weird World War III book that I was published. The anthology in 2020 was about war between the U.S. and Russia, and then that's kind of what happened. So, of course, this novel, which I started about a year and a half ago, was about a team that conducts crash retrievals. So, of course, Russia's alleging that's true. So we'll see how that goes. I might have to, by the time the thing, if it gets purchased by my publisher, by the time it comes out, I'll probably have to change it 6 times because it's supposed to happen in 2024 and all this stuff. But anyway, that is what it is. Let's see. So I'm going to try to share. This is not ideal, but I would have loved to share it in a different way. But this is the best I'm gonna be able to do. Okay. And all right. So I worked on this the last year and a half. It is an anthology about a kind of weird world war with China. And a lot of interesting authors here. I believe, if you're familiar with David Drake, I may actually have his last story. The last story he'll ever write is in this volume. Larry Correia and Steve Diamond have a story in here. We got Brian Trent, DJ Butler. Even I have a story in here, believe it or not. So, and I think the cover, I was blown away by this cover. It is absolutely amazing. So, in terms of projects that I have coming out, for those who aren't familiar with it, and by the way, you can pre-order this now. It comes out on the awesome day of January 2nd, right after the new year. So if you're returning something, you could probably pick it up. But at the end of the day, if you want to support the channel, pre-order the heck out of this so I can do more of these because I really don't. I think I've done 3 of these, and I think the first one is close to earning out, but I haven't, made a dime from this series just yet. So I'm pretty close, and I think this one will do well. So anyway, let me see if there's any comments because I haven't been paying attention. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe it is made. Maybe it is made in China. Let's see. Oh, I don't even know what I was referring to. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I sometimes do that though. Like I get ideas for people from watching other channels. Oh, thank you very much, Moon Man. Okay. Who's this? Okay. All right. So that's where we are there. And we're just going to go like straight into questions. Straight into questions. So I was gone for the, not last week, but the 2 weeks before that, I went to something called LibertyCon. I have a video about it last year. I haven't had any time to really do any videos about it this year, but it was a good time. It was with my publisher. I got to see a bunch of people. One of my favorite friends and authors, T.C. McCarthy, was not present because the convention was held at the same time that Yevgeny Prigozhin decided to march on Moscow. So he was obviously not able to be there. Had to cancel. So I kind of missed that. I also went to Yellowstone for like a day and got a bunch of pictures of buffalo and not much else. So that was all right. It was it was a decent time. And then I think after Yellowstone, I went to that LibertyCon, and then after LibertyCon, I came back, and I kind of drove the entire way from Northern California to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and back. So I stopped in Sedona for like a day and hiked up one of the big red rocks and got a bunch of pictures there, and then carried too much camera equipment and almost died kind of going back up the hill, even though it wasn't that bad. I shouldn't have carried like 50 pounds of equipment on my back in 100-degree weather. Not smart. So, uh, that is what it is. So, anyway, let's see what folks are saying in the comments. Yes, bison, buffalo, bison. I guess bison's the technical term. Absolutely. All right. So, what do people want me to talk about today? The Beyond Skinwalker stuff. That has everybody seen that Morehouse put together? I mean, it's pretty impressive what he did. Like it is like industrial quality impressive, and it didn't make the kind of the sound bites that these companies are looking for. So I don't know, but they did do like a little video where he talked about that particular exercise and showed where all the points were clustering. So yeah, I mean he claims it's the largest remote viewing project in history. I think that's certainly true from an open source perspective, but who knows what they've done in kind of in the black projects and things like that if the government's still doing it, which I'm sure they still are. And if they aren't still doing it, they're if they don't still have a program, they at least hire contractors all the time. So let's see. Yeah, it's beautiful there. I wish I could have stayed a little bit longer. I actually had to pay them $350 just so I could take video and use it for commercial purposes. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. I don't know. Maybe they have, but they're. I don't know. I don't think they're that. They're very like. I used to interact with them a lot in other jobs that I have, and they're very like they don't. They only take certain kinds of risk, but they don't take like this is a reputational risk sort of thing, and they don't do that kind of like they don't. They kind of do their traditional risk taking, but they don't really and they'll do things that are very grounded, like having faster computers and closer to the exchanges so that they could make faster decisions. And they'll do like lots of algorithmic stuff, but they're not going to do woo stuff. They don't take risks like that. Yeah, it's a stupid law they have because I'm sure these Hollywood production studios complained that YouTubers don't have to pay anything. We have to pay these fees and stuff like that. So um, yeah, but even like family offices are not. They're pretty rinky dink. They're not. They're even more conservative, less able to take risks. I mean, you would have to use the strategy for like 2 years and demonstrate ridiculous returns, and then people would still be skeptical of you. And then the moment it didn't work, they would sue you. I mean, there's a lot of risk. And then I think Ed Dames and somebody else were giving advice on something like this, and they got in trouble with the SEC for some reason because I'm sure they didn't know what the hell they were doing and they weren't following securities law and they didn't have like the proper licenses like Series 7 and Series 63 and all that stuff. So, and they were probably giving out financial advice when they weren't supposed to. So you also have to be careful with that sort of stuff. But maybe like trading your own platform and not taking money from investors. Maybe that might work. But who knows? Let's see. All right, what's up? What else is going on in the world? We have Yevgeny Prigozhin tried to roll into Moscow, took over Rostov, may have seized a nuclear facility. Couldn't get into the nukes, but it's a reasonable target to go after. So we're in the middle of potential disclosure. A lot of people coming out. Tim Burchett is claiming maybe as soon as this month, maybe that's going to come out. So maybe we'll have hearings. We'll see. It all seems a little bit too good to be true. Let's see. All right, you all are quiet. You all are quiet tonight. Oh, yeah. So I have so there's a story where there is an object that appears to accelerate or move. I mean, I don't know. Like all this stuff is classified, but I've just modeled it on. I just assumed that the unit that would do it would be part of the Combat Applications Group, which is just another name for Operational Detachment Delta, otherwise known as Delta Force. And they get this strange mission to the U.S. government satellites are tracking an object that appears to accelerate or move 63 times the speed of light. And the science is it doesn't actually move that fast; it just appears to move that fast because the way in any gravity drive would work is that you would compress the space time in front of you and expand the space time behind you. So you'd use gravity to propel yourself, or to not even propel yourself. You're actually technically not even moving, but you're just kind of like compressing that space time in front of you with gravity, like kind of bringing your target closer. And then you're using anti-gravity behind you to expand the gravity field, or kind of the warp field behind you. And that gets you to a target much faster and makes it look like you're traveling extremely fast, but in your own inertial frame inside that bubble, you're not really feeling like you're accelerating that much at all. So anyway, they see this object, they know it's going to crash somewhere on the planet, so they spin up both SEAL Team 6, and there's a unit within SEAL Team 6. It's like Black Squadron or something like that. Like they do the craziest stuff. So if it lands like anywhere in the ocean, it's their mission, right? And that's like 74% of the Earth's surface. If it lands on somewhere on land, Delta gets the mission. And then, of course, it happens to land in the Russian Far East, which creates a whole other set of issues and problems. So this thing crash lands. The Russians immediately send a crash retrieval team to the Russian Far East. And by the way, in terms of the Russian Far East, it's probably the most inhospitable place on the planet when it comes to temperatures. Like the coldest town or settlement in the world is in that region of Russia. So that's where kind of, parts of Siberia butt up to it and things like that. And it happens sometime in like September. So it's just when temperatures are starting to get a little bit colder. So anyway, they have to plan this mission. They have to infiltrate into Russia without being discovered. So, they have disguises and things like that. They plan safe houses, and they have to go out into this completely deserted area. They plan for the Russians to get there first, and then they plan to steal whatever crash lands from the Russians. Anyway, there's a lot of dark stuff that happens that I don't want to give too much away, but one of them is, I don't want to give it away. Like the Russians aren't as stupid as our media pretends they are, okay, at all. So there's a little Maskarovka and stuff like that that goes back and forth. And then the Delta Force guys who are in the Russian Far East, kind of trying to be stealthy and things like that, start to see weird stuff. And like by weird stuff, like wolves that don't behave like wolves, like human silhouettes that don't behave like humans, just weird stuff. They also start to see weird, like when they're looking at their watches, the moon doesn't rise when it's supposed to rise, right? It rises, night becomes much longer. Like there's all sorts of weird effects with gravity and red shift, gravitation, stuff like that. And these guys aren't technical guys, so they kind of can't really figure out what's going on. And I'm not gonna explain that part of it, but it gets weird. And then something else shows up. And anyway, and bad things happen, and it gets extremely cold because it's Siberia, and guys are getting frostbite and hypothermia, and they're starting to get hungry because you burn a lot of calories up there, and then the Spetsnaz come out, like, start hunting them, and there's just imagine it's inspired by the story The 10,000, which is I probably have maybe I don't have the book here. Let me see if I have the book here. Yes, I do. It's inspired by Xenophon's story about the 10,000, which is about a group of 10,000 Greek mercenaries who worked for one of the two sons of the Persian emperor, and the Persian emperor died, so they were fighting for control of Persia way back, before the birth of Christ and all that stuff. And what ends up happening is one of the emperors dies, or one of the competing emperors dies, and oh no, it's it's far more insidious than that. It's dark. Yeah, I wouldn't quite say it's an advanced. It's not like it's an advanced, not necessarily. You're assuming it's an advanced species, right? Um, and if you're looking at like a species like whales, right, they communicate with sound waves. Right, we communicate with sound waves too, but it's like a different. There's nothing to say that there might be some species out in the universe that moves through space and communicates, and instead of emitting sound waves like we do, they might emit gravitational waves. So there's a lot of weird stuff, uh, and it's not a good thing that this thing went down. Where Oh, and by the way, China wants it too, so they invade the Russian Far East. So there are Chinese divisions that Delta guys have to avoid as well. So there's a lot of crazy, and then they have to exfiltrate and do all sorts of stuff, and at least try to bring back some technology, because that was the mission. But the mission goes foobar like 7 different times. So anyway, I think it's going to be really good. I have to go through it one more time. I have to add a subplot, which I'll probably do something from the Russian perspective of the Spetsnaz commander who's there. But I think I probably have to come up with another 25,000 words, but with a subplot, and then I write pretty lean initially, and then I add details when I go back through it. But right now I have 40 chapters. I kind of went through the first chapter recently, but I have to get it done. My goal is to get it done by September, and then submit it and hope my publisher buys it. So anyway, I hope I didn't bore anybody on that, but that's kind of very high level what the story's about. So I don't know. What do folks? I feel like I'm like yelling into the abyss or talking into the abyss. I don't know if like people are like, that's stupid. Like, I don't, whatever. Like, I'm here for remote viewing. Who knows? And I didn't put any of that stuff in it yet, because my publisher is like a hard science fiction publisher generally. So I have to be careful about putting too much psychic elements or kind of dark, horrific stuff. I mean, I get my shots in, but I can't. I like to have dark endings, and this one, as a it has a happy-ish ending. So yeah, I know exactly what Nietzsche said. If you stare long enough into the abyss, sometimes the abyss stares back. Okay, yeah, add that one up. Yeah, so it's definitely a weird one. So what we have here, yeah, for sure, and I mean, it's kind of they have some theories on how it works, but it's more scientific than most people most people realize. So it's you can explain at least some of it with quantum mechanics, the whole non-locality aspect. That's why it's not limited by time or space. It's non-local. It's a non-local phenomena. So yeah. All right. What else do folks want to know? What do folks want to see in terms of interviews? Like who haven't I interviewed yet that you'd like to see me interview? Oh, I never explained what happened to Gary Nolan, by the way. So I had an interview scheduled with him sometime in June, but between the time I had it scheduled and when I scheduled it, David Grush came out and as a whistleblower and claimed that there was a crash retrieval program and extraterrestrials. We had bodies and all sorts of crazy stuff. And when it came time to have the meeting or the interview, he didn't show up. And I'm like, I sent him an email like, "Are you okay? I hope everything's okay." Whatever. Radio silence. And then about a week later, I'm like, "Hey, I'd love to reschedule this. You know, is everything okay?" And this and that. And his assistant finally responded and said that he wasn't doing any interviews right now. And I suspect it's because this news came out and it was a little too hot to handle for him, given his relationship with the DoD and CIA and analyzing some of the metamaterials. That again, I'm speculating. Maybe he checked out my channel and said this guy is a nut job. I cannot. I doubt. I don't think it's that. I think it's just these revelations came out and there's probably a lot of heat on him, and maybe even Stanford was putting heat on him. I don't know this for a fact, but it's certainly possible. So if I knew how to contact Tim Taylor, and this is not for folks who are listening, this is not Travis Taylor. There's actually somebody separate. His name is Tim Taylor, and he has been associated with Diane Pasulka's book American Cosmic. He's also been associated with Chris Bledsoe, and he's this guy who worked for NASA who has this. He'll go to sleep and he'll get like these consciousness downloads, and he'll come up with like a new biotechnology, and then he doesn't have, as far as I know, any scientific training himself, but he'll start a company and organize a company and develop the technology and do really well and then move on. But there's something about him that um, actually during my Blitzo interview he's mentioned. So I think Chris said that Tim Taylor was kind of like, "Why you?" to Chris Bledsoe, like, "Why you?" Almost like, again, I can't ascribe his intentions or motivations, but it's almost like he was jealous that Chris Bledsoe had this relationship with these entities. But Tim Taylor is like, there's something, he worked on all these, black projects and things like that on anything that's related to the UAP phenomena. So he's definitely in the know. There's some like metal that he has that he uses to test if people have had any interactions with these entities. He gave that to Chris Bledsoe, and Bledsoe like almost collapsed. So, it was clear like that. He said that they can I want to say it's. He said they could traverse like 50,000 light years, very very quickly. So all sorts of crazy stuff. But yeah, if I knew how to contact him, I absolutely would. I mean, it depends, right? It absolutely depends. So yeah, I would say if they have human DNA and there may be their parents were born, both parents were born on Earth, I would say they're still human. Um, yeah, I think it's more of a classification question. I don't know. I have no idea. And this is the first part of the question: how you define human. I mean, I would just use DNA as a definition, right? 46 chromosomes, or 46 chromosomes, or 23 pairs of chromosomes. You know, best I can do. All right. What else do folks want to see? What other guests? Who was Jim Peniston again? That name sounds familiar. I'm gonna look him up. There's another guy, Mario Wood, Mario Woods, who looks interesting too. He had some like crazy encounter. Oh, okay. He's a Rendlesham Forest guy. With Jim Peniston, his stuff maps onto that. Oh yeah, I think Moonman recommended the same guy. Yeah, it sounds like he's like a wild card type. He could either be really good or really really out there. And yeah, Rendlesham. What do folks want to see less of? And then when you respond, because there might be a delay, just put like more of or less of in terms of different topics, or if you're really mean, like less of, more of, or less of which guests. Anything else crazy in the news you don't want to talk about? I mean, who's this? Darko Bajlo? Who the heck is that? I want to look that up. Hmm. Is this the? Did this guy like disappear? This is about like electromagnetic waves moving backward in time. Yeah, that's weird. Hmm. Yeah, it's like there was like another component to Maxwell's equations that allowed the electromagnetic radiation to move forward and backward in time. If you can do that, you can send messages back to the past or messages into the future. Well, you can still do that because the wave travels until it attenuates, right? Just by sending a wave in the present, you're sending it by definition into the future. Everybody's quiet today. Quiet. Somebody's upset. I don't know if you can all hear that. I, I would like to see Jim Cramer go up against a remote viewer on stock picks. I think it would be embarrassing for Jim Cramer. Wait, J.G. Cramer. I'm thinking about like the stock guy. Who's J.G. Cramer? Hold on. Oh, it's a different guy. uh, Transactional interpretation of quantum mechanics. Oh, he's been at Brookhaven Relativistic Heavy Ion Collider at Brookhaven National Laboratory, the Particle Accelerator at CERN in Geneva, Switzerland. Interesting. Okay, so he investigated the possibility that quantum non-locality might be used for communication between observers through the use of switchable interference patterns. In the course of this work, he gained a new understanding of the showstopper with the quantum formalism that prevents such non-local signaling. For each interference pattern, nature also provides and superimposes an anti-interference pattern. These are always combined in a way that erases potential non-local signals. The two interference patterns complement each other, resulting in no perceptible interference pattern. Measurement changes can dramatically modify the individual interference pattern, but always so that erasure occurs. In this way, the nature is protected from the possibility of retrocausal signaling and its consequences and paradoxes. So again, retrocausality is, if an event in the past can cause an event in the future, if an event in the future can cause an event in the past. That's the principle of retrocausality. Anyway, sorry to go on that kind of wild. Worst pain. I don't know. Probably like scrapes when I was a kid, but I don't really get hurt. I don't know. It's a great question. Yeah. Yeah, the quantum interference patterns from the future and the past cancel each other out. Yeah, Jimmy. Bye bye bye. So. All right. Ah, interesting. Interesting. What else? Sorry, I don't have a lot today. I've had a lot of insane stuff I had to get done in the last few days. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I'm always thinking I can't turn it off. Oh yeah, many times since I was like 12 years old. Never any conscious success. I don't even know. Like I literally would lay there for an hour and a half trying to do it, and like perfectly still, and not something, not something that I've been successful at doing. So I reached out to him. He told me he wasn't doing any more interviews this year. So I think he's waiting for. I mean, that's kind of what happened with some of these guys. As soon as this disclosure machine started, they went dark, like they went silent. It's almost as if they're just waiting for this. Another person I want to reach out to, two people I want to reach out to are Jim Semivan and John Alexander, and I have both of their addresses. Um, or actually, I don't have Semivan's email address, but I have his. I friended him on LinkedIn of all places, so I didn't want to like send him like a request right away. I wanted to wait a little bit, but I'd love to talk to him. But I imagine he's probably under this same what's the word for it? The quarantine's not the right word, but there's like a blackout. Like they're not. A lot of these guys aren't talking right now. But Ramirez is kind of quiet. Nolan is kind of quiet. If you notice, he hasn't like he wasn't just BSing me. I don't think he's done any interviews since Grush came out. So um, I think he's gone dark. I haven't heard any. I haven't seen anything from Semivan. I bet you John Alexander might talk. So I need to reach out to him. I actually showed David Morehouse how to use ChatGPT to do like annoying administrative tasks that I waste a lot of time on, but uh, they're like no value add, like writing like thank you notes and like invitation emails. And ChatGPT is pretty amazing. Um, Maybe I should pull that up. It's actually I'm going to pull that up and just show you what it does because I showed Morehouse and he had no idea. He was just like, oh my god, it does that. And as an example, he asked like, come up with like an outline for a remote viewing course. And I'm like, okay. And I just typed it in, and like a minute later or 30 seconds later, ChatGPT, and I said, like, put together a remote viewing course that David Morehouse would teach. And it just popped up the thing, and he's just like, oh my God. Yeah, so that makes me wanna look at it real quick. Let me see if I can pull that up. Um okay. All right. And I'm just gonna pull it up. And let me just put something there so it's a little bit you can see it a little bit better. All right, so y'all can see that, right? Let me see if I can. I don't like that. I don't like that either. Uh, all right, that's probably the best it's going to be. All right, so let's play with ChatGPT a little bit. So let's say this is pretty amazing, right? Jim Semi Van. That's not I could sign a request to interview on the Through a Glass Barkley podcast. Um, Similar folks who have interviewed are David. Well, that's actually Chris Bledsoe, David Morehouse, and Grant Cameron. Okay. I mean, look at this. Let's just see how well you guys can see this. Dear Mr. Jim's, I mean, like you'd have to edit it a little bit. You can't just. In fact, there was a case of a lawyer who asked, had ChatGPT come up with a legal argument, and it it did, and then it made up a case. So he's arguing with like a case that didn't exist. So I imagine the guy maybe, I hope he doesn't get disbarred, but he might. All right. So I hope this message finds you in good health and high spirits. My name is, I should put my name, but I am the host of the Through a Glass Dark podcast. I'm reaching out to you today with great admiration for your work and a deep interest. Okay. To the person connected with esteemed individuals in the field of ufology and consciousness exploration. Da, da, da. Each kind of, I mean, some of this is over the top, but still. I mean, look at this. Unbelievable. I mean, I need to change this a little bit too, but literally, like, you don't. So, and then watch this. Like, write this. Redo this, but with more references to geopolitics and quantum mechanics. I don't know. Who knows what this thing will do? I mean, it's still pseudo gibberish in some places, right? But and the existence of, I mean, like the existence of other dimensions. Like what? I mean, like I didn't come up with this. This is nuts. But see how quickly it did that? You know, it's crazy. It is absolutely insane. So, all right, is everybody still there? Does anybody have a theory of what the where Yevgeny Prigozhin is right now? Does anybody know? He's still alive? Oh, here we go. I wouldn't take it blindly, but and I wouldn't do it till I wouldn't write like a short story using it or anything creative. But for like mindless administrative tasks, I need to use it, um, or I need to start using it. I haven't really used it at all. Wait, who's still alive? Oh, Prigozhin, Yevgeny Prigozhin. Yeah, I think there's more than meets the eye going on there. Let's see. All right, I want to do this just this once. Any patrons want to get on? Have a camera? Want to get on? I mean, there's one patron on right now, but I might randomly do that from time to time. Because I only see one. Anyway, just let me know. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I won't put you up there, but yeah, I think you're on vacation. not not gonna make the wifey happy for sure. Oh man, it's just a like quiet day today. Not a lot of activity. Let's see if there's anything else that is crazy that's going on. I don't see much. Oh, you want the draft of the novel? It's not ready yet. It's not good yet. Well, I guess it is. It is good, but it's you know, I need to I need to beef it up a little bit and correct a bunch of little errors and add more words. Because right now it's very lean. It's unnecessarily so. So, and again, like I said, I need to add like a subplot or two to change it up a little bit. But I will absolutely send you the draft once because I don't want to waste your time yet, right? Like if I send out if I send out a draft, I want somebody to be able to see it and make substantive comments. I don't want to send like a rickety error laden manuscript that's just not ready for prime time yet. I mean, this is after going through the first chapter, I was actually pretty surprised at how good it was in the the first time through, which is not. I'm sure as I toward the back end of the book, as I'm just like trying, like, please God, like, I got this finished. I probably need more work in the back end. Yeah, it's like the problem with writing is I have like a consulting business that I do. I have like an education business that I do. Like those two are the most by far, like 99% of the money I bring in. And then I have like this channel and then I have writing. And so writing is the one that gets the because here on this channel I'm starting to yield like revenue as you saw, but it's still very small. Whereas writing, it's like you don't see anything, and you might never see it. You might write a novel and nobody buys it, and you can self-publish it, but that's a whole other thing too, and you don't get as much exposure to bookstores. I'm sure you can get around it, but it's just not. I don't have the time for that. I'd rather launch my first novel with a traditional publisher. So you don't want to be reading this thing on vacation, especially when something that's not fully baked, right? I mean, like I was going through the manuscript and like I had two characters. In one sentence, he was from Alaska, and then like three paragraphs down, he has a Texan drawl, and it's like, oh my god, like good lord, what the heck? And I did with two different characters, right? Like one guy was like first from Seattle, Washington, and then like the next sentence he was from Ventura, California. I'm like, I mean, so like the character stuff has to. I really need to work on that. Work on that piece. Plot, great. Plot, solid, awesome. But I need to like work on the characterization. So let me at least get halfway through it, Moon Man. Let me try to get to like 80,000 words. So it's like barely viable. Right now, it's not even a minimal viable product. It's like, I went through the first chapter and I only added 200 words. So, and plus, you don't want to be reading this thing on your vacation, Anyway, let's see. I think there's anything else we should cover. Because it doesn't look like there's a lot of traffic right now. But the problem with these podcasts, not podcasts, but the problem with these live streams is usually people don't start, trickling in until like after the first hour. So we're after the first hour right now, but there's still not a lot of folks on. So I don't know if there's any interest in doing some more stuff. Let's see. What else do people want to talk about? I mean, if there's nothing folks want to talk about, I can just be done. Oh, what's that? What we got? Yeah, it's slow. Like this is the slowest it's been in a while. I mean, granted, I probably have prepared the least for this one because I'm doing like 16 other things. So, like this again, this thing doesn't even work. And at first I thought it was super, super annoying. So maybe I need to physically connect it to my camera. I don't know. Oh, turtle. Sheer political incompetence, like the most politically incompetent thing I've ever seen in my entire life. When the commander of Afghan force of U.S. like the operation in Afghanistan retires 2 months before the projected withdrawal, that is the loudest sentiment that the military knew it was going to be a shit show. And so instead of like speaking out about it and kind of screwing up his retirement, he just kept his mouth shut and went away. But it's not necessarily clear that that's exactly what happened, but anybody you talk to in the military today, and I know a few colonels or two, the fact that the guy retired 2 months before the thing was supposed to go down is like screaming, this is going to be a disaster. Like you can't set a date certain and then demand that it gets done. I think even the U.S. president got censored on the floor of Parliament for the way that thing went, because I think he was just very focused on this on, I think, September 11th. Like that had to be the day. And as a result, they left people behind and all that stuff. Although there was a slight positive side to it. Did you hear about the firefight between the Afghans and the Iranians? Maybe that's an added benefit. Yeah, but I mean, you're just going to have, it's just going to be internectine warfare between the tribes. It's not like the weapons are going to be, I mean, they might be exported, but if they're exported, I bet you the CIA. Well, I don't know. I bet you there's intelligence agencies that are buying back some of those weapons and supplying them to the Ukrainians and all sorts of stuff in the background. But that was the most incompetent political decision I've seen in my lifetime. And I was born the same year that the evacuation from Saigon happened. I think it was the same year. And that was kind of a mess, but this is like a whole nother, like we left Americans still there. We left people who would risk their lives to fight. Like it was just, and it was political. It was not a military failure. It was It was just a crappy political decision. I'm not saying we shouldn't have withdrawn. I'm just saying it should have been, if these conditions on the ground are X, then we will withdraw. If they're X plus one, we won't withdraw until that plus one is handled. And it just didn't happen that way. And the fact that like anybody who expected the Afghans who were still with the Afghan National Army to not collapse is just an idiot. Um, anyway. Huh. Yeah, I don't know about the Wusa. I don't know that stuff. I don't know. Oh, so knowing what I'm just rereading your questions from that angle. Yeah, yeah. I don't think there's any like woo anything to this. I think it was just um, government's more incompetent than people think. No, no, they're no. I, I, I don't think so. I mean, for all we know, they could ally with Iran and make a mess of Pakistan. Who knows, right? But trigger a war with whom, right? I mean, Iran is one thing, but it's not like we have any operational control in Afghanistan anymore. In fact, ever since bin Laden was taken out in 2011, we should have just declared victory and then just left some special forces in there and gotten out. Like we should have gotten out during the Obama administration in 2011. He should have just done the victory lap that he did and then gotten the heck out of there. And then just used small special forces and drones. Yeah, maybe, but I don't know. I don't think these guys are that smart. Maybe, but the thing is, like, we're running out of ammunition. And there was an ammunition plant in Missouri, I think, that had like some bizarre fire, right? So even if even with that, like we can't make munitions fast enough. So if push came to shove, like there's a good chance we would run out of ammunition when this thing, popped off with Russia. So yeah, I don't. But it is frustrating watching the Ukrainian counteroffensive because it's not. They're saying it's like there's some people saying it's like failed NATO tactics against the Russians. That's not accurate. The issue is the Ukrainians don't have air superiority, and no tactics are going to work well if you can't dominate the skies like the U.S. does. So yeah, I don't know about that. I'm just more concerned with like where's Prigozhin? Like what's going on with that? He kind of like seizes a nuclear facility and then he suddenly goes away. I don't know. It's crazy. Oh, Frank, I made the offer to Moon Man, but if any of the patrons wants to get up and speak on this thing, I'll send you a code. But just let me know. Yeah, if I knew how to, I mean, I like know how to remote view because I read a book, but that doesn't mean I actually know how to remote view. So I'm just waiting for Morehouse to start his class because then I will learn how to do it. Uh, I mean, if you sent F-35s, it would like fly 3% of the time, and then like be in the hangar getting fixed 97% of the time. So I don't know if F-35 Lightning twos would work, but the problem is if you bring Tomahawks in, then the Russians start using more of these hypersonic missiles, which also no bueno. And you also have how the Russians know if those like how do the Russians know those Tomahawks aren't nuclear tipped, right? You risk the specter of escalation into a nuclear proliferation or to a nuclear spiral, right? So I wouldn't give them Tomahawks just for that reason. You could have a lot of escalatory issues. I'm just curious how many troops the Russians have. I haven't looked into this, but if they're massing on the border, if they expect to do a big push after the Ukrainians, their counteroffensive peters out. Because my understanding is they only have like 9 brigades. That's not really, you can't really do much with that. And then the Russians allegedly flooded, flooded one of the areas of control near Kherson by blowing up a dam. So I don't really know if the Ukrainians have. I mean, I think they just have to take as much land as they can and then get a peace deal. I mean, that's literally the only move right now. But if the Russians take some time and really build up a massive force in Belarus and in eastern, outside of eastern Ukraine, then one concerted push might knock down the whole house of cards. Because in the very beginning, it was always a very small surgical campaign that they had planned, and it just, after the Ukrainians cratered Gostomel Airport, that was kind of one of their key forward operating bases that the Russians had planned. And once the Ukrainians cratered it, runways with artillery, like the Ilyushin 76s or 75, I can't remember the number, couldn't land. And then we're starting to get shot out of the sky, like the Russian paratroopers, the VDV. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like what the Ukrainians need is manpower, and that's the critical issue. And the only way you can do that is you bring Poland into the fight, and then which I think would, but you would explain the conflict in NATO, in which case the U.S. would have to get in. So it's not well managed. There were these kind of initial successes and things like that, but like this is how Russia always fights wars. Like they blunder in the first 2 years, lose tremendous amounts of manpower, and then they learn, and then they steamroll whoever's doing what they're doing. Right, first you had Napoleon, and then you had Hitler. And I think even Charles the 12th, back when Sweden, did some, was kind of messing around that area. Speaking of which, have people seen these trailers for the Napoleon movie? I mean, like, it looks awesome. Awesome. And the same, I can never remember what is it? What's his name? His last name's Phoenix. I think it's like Joachim Phoenix. I mean, like, perfect. The same guy who played Commodus in Gladiator is the same guy who's going to play Napoleon. The same guy who played like the mentally ill Joker, same guy who's playing Napoleon. Like, it's going to be awesome. And I'm watching the previews. Like, there's one battle. Like, I can tell the battles by basically what's happening. And there's one where he's just showing like Austerlitz, which, if you don't know anything about battles and things like that, it's basically the Confederates tried to replicate it at Gettysburg, and that's Pickett's charge. And the Confederates didn't count on the change in weapon systems. They just didn't account for that, and as a result, Pickett and his men got slaughtered. Oh wow. Wait, offer a green card in an apartment to a Russian woman age 18 to 25 for every Ukrainian killed. Huh. That's pretty dark. Yeah, Joachim. Yeah, yeah. He's. I really want to see that movie. It looks really, really good. So, and I think there's like trailers for Oppenheimer too. That's another one I want to see, but I always wait until they're on, you know, on demand, and I just see it on Netflix, or I just buy it on my personal. I don't like to go to movie theaters anymore. Well, I mean, Russia's already hurting demographically. Like they're at like the narrowest part of their demographic structure. Like they're not quite there, but they're getting close. And then they're just every able-bodied male is just getting thrown into the meat grinder. So yeah, it's going to be weird for Russian women for a while. Oh, walking Phoenix. Okay, yeah, I can't. Walking Phoenix. It's like Joaquin Phoenix or something like that, right? Joaquin Phoenix. Yeah, yeah. I'm not pronouncing it remotely right. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I mean, at one point, I think they were importing like Syrians and Africans on the Russian side and just like throwing them in. And there was all this news media about it, and then it just stopped. It just like disappeared, and you heard nothing about it. So I don't know what's going on with that. It's just weird. And they were emptying their prisons too to serve in Wagner. And then what happened? And then there started like these guys are getting finished with their 6 month conscriptions, at least in or contracts with Wagner, and you know they're freed into the Russian population, and they're like committing like grievous crimes when they're released. It's crazy. So I don't know. I feel like Putin's got one last big push in him, and then after that, he's just going to have to settle for a frozen conflict. But if this escalates into anything, um, I don't know. I think after Afghanistan and the way that American elites just let that thing burn after 20 years of good families sacrificing their sons and daughters there, the army can't recruit. Like people are like, screw these people. Like they don't give a crap about us. So why do we want to serve these corrupt politicians in Washington for their wars? Like, and I'm as red blooded American as can be, but like I don't, you know, the worst of us are the people who are running the country right now. And I'm not. This is not by I'm not picking on any political parties. They're all scumbags. So like, why do I want to make? Oh there was a so the U.S. military had this problem like 10 years ago. I think it's called like Straya or something like that, where you can map your workouts and your location. So there was a Russian submarine commander who was like posting his workouts on the Straya thing, and I wouldn't say he was defenestrated, i.e., thrown out of a window, but he didn't survive. And the thing is so odd is like the U.S. military had this problem, we fixed it, and it's like the Russians weren't even paying attention. Like, I don't. It's just weird. I did my two, and I regret even that. Like my lymph nodes like blew up like balloons. I've never had an illness in my entire life that made me that did something like that to me. Not one. And yeah, I'm never trusting these people again. I mean, they're done. I'm done. I'm done. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. I think they're still actually vaxing people. Like, and they were separating people when they refused to get vaxxed. I don't know if they're still doing that though, because behind closed doors, they're still talking about nixing an entire division because they don't have enough soldiers to populate it. And why should they? I mean, why should they? I mean, you tell the demographic of the country that they're all white nationalists, and then you're like, oh, we could be at a war with Russia and China, guys. We need your help, and it's just like, no. You called me like you spit on us after we fought your wars for 20 years, and you expect our children, or expect us to volunteer our children to serve your empire? Yeah, screw you. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that stat. I mean, Sweden didn't kind of just ran as normal, and it was fine. So I I don't know. Anyway, I gotta stop being. Yeah, and I wonder how Sweden did. Sweden, they didn't implement any of these measures. I don't know. I think after that experience, I mean, I think trust in our institutions, particularly in public health and in the political class, uh, they might be able to make up for some of it by disclosing, by being honest about these crash retrieval programs. But if they try to, kind of gaslight us on that, then I think we're done. I think we're done. Like, I mean, you can't trust anything these people say. You had Director Ray of the FBI talking about how the Chinese have these cells where they're elected to each company has these cells that maintain orthodoxy. And then there's, a congressman that's like, well, didn't you guys do that with Twitter? You're telling Twitter about terms of service and getting people kicked off the platform and censored Americans. And, just the hypocrisy is just, it's gotten to a point where it's just, you can't trust anything these clowns say because they're clowns and they're not even smart clowns. You got you got whistleblowers who are being investigated for not following disclosure of doing business with foreign entities, and they're being investigated by people who violated the same thing but aren't being investigated. It's just a clown show. Like, you can't take any of these people seriously anymore. They're a joke. They're an absolute joke. So, I just hope our military doesn't fall apart because that's about the only institution in the country that's, you know, still worthwhile in some way. And even that's starting to deteriorate. So you know, yeah, I feel like it's a show. I feel like we're in the Truman Show or something. It's just like, I can't even. I mean, like, look, again, I'm trying to be bipartisan, but you have a Brazilian in Congress. It's like he's gay, he's not gay, he's he raised money for a dog and then the dog died or he killed the dog. But we have a Brazilian in Congress, and it's just like it came out, the guy lied about everything, and he's still in Congress. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. Yeah, I mean, green energy is not, like, people think it's green, but it's real. It's like, let's say you get a Tesla, right? Like, you still, unless you have nuclear power, which they keep shuttering these nuclear power plants. That's the cleanest form of energy that we currently have, right? Because it literally produces zero emissions. Now it has a waste problem, but zero emissions. Better than solar, better than wind, and those have their own problems. They're peaking power sources, right? And you need to solve the base load problem, so you're constantly, or supplying electricity to the grid. Solar is intermittent; it only works during the day. You can store some of it, and then wind is also intermittent. Intermittent. There's only certain times that it stores, and it has like there's environmental issues. Like look up cadmium telluride, right? That's an element used in solar photovoltaic cells, right? And it's in it with like lithium, like digging up lithium pits and things like that. Not great, not great for the environment. Even natural gas, which is cleaner than coal, like you're still literally pumping methane into the atmosphere. So we definitely need some sort of a breakthrough on the power. And the reason it might be stalled is that then you're going to have to deal with a $1 trillion industry that kind of goes away pretty quickly, right? You have to transition out of oil and gas and all that stuff if this technology exists and if we understand how the power plant works. So, yeah, look, if the US government wants to subcontract this stuff out, I'm Silicon Valley adjacent, happy to start a company, happy to hire people, engineers, ex-engineers, Google and things like that. And we will find a way to get a solution, but nobody's knocking on my door. Nobody's kind of doing that stuff. But, you know, I also think that like there's a lot of people who are on the outside who don't know what's going on the inside, making it like we can't figure out the propulsion and things like that. Really interesting. I don't know. That's a weird problem to have. Well, I'm literally like anything he's saying, I'm like throwing up. So you're seeing it, but you're seeing it in this format instead of the other way. But no, he's not secret. Unless there's a way, unless there's a way for him to make his own comments limited. You're not going to get Frank. You're not going to get a clean answer out of him. He's gonna exploit this as much as he possibly can. For sure. So he is indeed a man of mystery. And he has a different title in our Patreon thing. It's got something to do with Baltimore and Witch Kings. So same guy. But anyway, yeah, and I have questions for you, Frank. I'm not going to ask them on the live stream, but when you missed the Patreon thing last weekend, but I have questions about based on the proximity of where you live to a certain other location. I definitely have questions. So I'll leave it at that because I don't want to like all that stuff is for the patrons. So, and I know you live near a place. So, and trust me, like Moon Man's got a very interesting backstory that you should hear when we do that, and as does the other patron. He worked at an interesting place. So yeah, definitely. Not really, because no one knows who you are. Right, and there's only like a limited number of people on that server. So now your OPSEC is still pretty clean. For sure. Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's Yeah, I mean, there's probably some facilities, but there's also a private private thing, like a private facility that does stuff. Yeah, 100%, 100%, 100%. So anyway, yeah, I think now everybody knows. So I'm just gonna make that go away for a second. Um, yeah, but all of you are like adjacent to this in some way that's not initially obvious. So, all right, Moon Man, I know you're kind of on vacay with the whiz knife. So enjoy yourself. Thanks for showing up. I appreciate it, and thanks for all the good questions. Yeah, yeah. One another guy was security at a certain place for like in his younger days. So I don't want to broadcast it, but he had some interesting stories on one of those live streams that we do for the for the patrons. So yeah, definitely interested in hearing some stories because I'm sure you see some strange strange stuff. And by the way, I think Jimmy Church, like the radio host, he lives out there too. He lives in I think he lives like down the street or local to that same place. So at least he's always talking about it. So and he claims he sees some weird stuff too. So who knows? Um, anyway, all right. What else do folks? I think we've been on for like an hour and 35. What is it? Almost an hour and 35 minutes. Anything else folks want to talk about or cover? And Frank, you're more than welcome. Like I can send you. I don't know if you heard me, but I offered patrons if they want to come up on the live stream with me, they are more than welcome. So Moon Man's on vacay, so he could not do that, and plus it would probably mess up his OPSEC. Yeah, cool. All right, what do folks want to talk about? No, it's like a slow night. It's a slow night tonight. Yeah, yeah. You probably had to. I mean, you're on West Coast time, so it's probably early for you in terms of like work, getting out of work, and all that stuff. So, folks on the East Coast though, it's like pushing 11:37, something like that. So, and I was also meticulous about like planning the alerts, like the day of, and then an hour before, send out the alerts, and I had them like automated and all that stuff. That didn't wasn't as well. I mean, to be fair, I had David Morehouse last time, so it was a little bit easier to like that guy can talk for hours, literally. Just he's got so many stories, so much stuff. So, and I have a ton of episodes with him. Two more that there's one today, obviously, and then two more. And there's another physicist that there's some background work I have to do, but I want to get him on soon as well. But um, I just feel like the moment I edit these things, it takes. I've been having a lot of issues with my editing software on the audio side. Like it just craps out. Like I'll be 5 minutes into editing something, and then like it'll just stop, and then everything after that will turn into like a loud, high pitched scream. So I have to like delete that half, and then like splice in the next part of it, and You can't really tell. Like the Morehouse one, I had to like break the audio. Like it was an hour and a half episode, and I had to break the audio up into 15 different segments to get the thing not to break every time I did it. And you'd never be able to tell, but it took me like 18 hours. Like it was a nightmare. Yeah, it's a good it sets up like all the work that he did. The good stuff though, in fact, I'll just add this back to the stream. Um that's just the best way to do this. All right, I'm assuming y'all can still hear me, but let me also remove this banner. Actually, not a banner, but so this episode's we start going into some of the stuff like portals and vortices and UAPs and things like that. And then it gets really really weird when we start talking about the life forms that the remote viewers were detecting. So it's definitely going to be super interesting. And then this one's a crazy episode too because Frank Milburn has a consulting business and scientists come to him. So this is not like I heard a story about from a person who told me from another person this and that. He was consulting clients who were scientists, one of whom uh, was suicided and was saying, "I am not suicidal. I will not. If I commit suicide, it's I didn't do it. Something happened to me." And one of these scientists, died. And there were a number of others kind of working on the same project, and they weren't even part of like a deep program. They were just working on certain technologies that were related to similar technologies that may be exhibited by some of these craft. And it was just all kind of open stuff. So it's almost like their competition decided to come in. And so I don't, and some of the techniques that these people use are pretty disturbing. So that one will be, it's already scheduled, it's done, wrapped up on all that stuff. So it's scheduled for that's the Monday episode. And then I still have to edit the two Morehouse episodes, and then I have another Frank Milburn episode that's just more Russia Ukraine stuff. So those three episodes I haven't edited yet, but hopefully I don't have the same audio issues. If I do, it just takes hours, and it's really really annoying. Um, yeah, he's careful. Like he doesn't like just say stuff. He backs it up with actual experiences and things like that. Like he's not a bullshitter, but he's willing to to explore some of these things. Yeah, it's good. I mean, because it's not just him talking; it's like the sketches. It's the actual like on Beyond Skinwalker when they had that thing on their website. Like they show like a rapid like flip through of the graphics. Like this actually goes through page by page with some of the stuff that they sketched. So it is really 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 good. Yeah, the Milburn episode scared the crap out of me. Because they're using like Havana syndrome is a thing, and the reason Havana syndrome is a thing is because they have these directed energy weapons, like I think like micro portable, and like they're literally frying people alive. Like one guy had his like like he heard a pop, and then he had like like a burning, salty liquid going down his throat, and it turned out that his cerebral spinal fluid burst through the wall of his throat and like burned his throat, but it was also cerebral spinal fluid because somebody was frying his back with a directed energy weapon, like a microwave or something like that. So it's really, really creepy stuff. Yeah, but like if I posted it raw, it I want to have good quality. Like it's and and there's other stuff too. Like we have to stop in the middle of the interview because the wind's blowing open a door, or like I mean, there's some there's some ghetto stuff that I have to do sometimes that you can't even tell, right? Because one time in one of the episodes, I accidentally deleted not deleted, but I like removed my picture, so it just had like his picture and it didn't have mine, so I had to like fake it so that so that like I was just going like that, but it was like a splice from another section. So you know there's some cutting room floor stuff that's pretty funny that you have to do. There's one episode should I have where I got disconnected from Lynn Buchanan, and he's sitting there like I'm not on the call anymore, and he's sitting there like talking. He's just like, "Ooh, they got him." He's just like laughing and making these. I mean, just funny moments, but it's not a good experience for the viewer. So I have to make sure I. Yeah, I was actually surprised too. I thought these tactics went away, but it's almost like they've gotten out of control. Yeah, I know, and I think that's why this disclosure movement's super important. Because I think if we realize that there's something out there beyond ourselves, that all this nonsense and all these clown shows that are going on end, and people start focusing on what's important rather than just killing each other for what. Yeah, yeah, AC would be nice, but you know what? If we had free energy, it would be a lot nicer. Yeah, I mean, and these guys weren't even working in black projects. They were working in like white. They just like you publish a paper on some aspect of like anti gravity, and next thing you know, somebody shows up at a bar and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're working on this, aren't you?" Mm-hmm. And your family lives. Your wife's name is this and that. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they just walk away. They don't threaten you not to do it or anything like that. But then you know somebody messes with the brake pads in your car. You go off on an international trip. You come back to your to the airport in airport parking, and your door is slightly ajar and the battery is drained. Like stuff that if you tried to report it to the police, they would think you were crazy. So Frank runs a business where he's familiar with many of these tactics because he worked in the intelligence world for a while in the UK. And scientists call him when they have problems about how to proceed and what to do when you're in these situations where local law enforcement can't really help you. So anyway, yeah, just basically, if you're a scientist, probably don't work in those areas unless you work directly for the government. I mean, that's the advice I would give you. And I don't even know if it's the U.S. government. It might be a contractor hiring these people for a special access program, and the U.S. government might not even know that they're doing it. So you have like this mercenary problem too. Yeah, it's messed up. It's truly screwed up because it might threaten a patent that a larger company has. Like there's some dirty stuff happening. I mean, that's why disclosure is not happening. It's not that like they're worried about um, ontological shock or anything like that. It's because they've been doing stuff that's not legal. completely illegal and immoral. And once you start doing it, it snowballs and it becomes very hard to pull back. And the only way you can do it is if you have some sort of truth and reconciliation commission. But what if your dad was murdered by one of these sociopaths, right? Like, you gonna forgive him? It's just it's the whole thing is kind of messed up. Oh, which one was a good interview? Oh, yeah, okay, I'm sorry. You saw it already. Yeah, 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 yeah. Patrons, yeah, there's the on my Patreon account, there's like the tier, the lieutenant tier, they get to see like one episode a week or so beforehand, before everybody else does. So Frank has already seen it. Yeah, yeah. And when he says the scientist one, he means this one. So Frank has already seen it. That's right. That's right. Although I need to get better at Discord. I stink at Discord. I'm not. If you post something and then like 3 days later, I'm like, oh yeah, good. I gotta be better there. All right, what else we got? Maybe I'll give it another 11 minutes to see if anybody else has questions. It always kind of picks up. Like, I mean, it's been slow most of this live stream, but this time around, it just picks up when you're like we're in hour two. So we'll see. Yeah, there's just one physicist who like is it's like he's got a super interesting theory about. I actually discussed it at the very beginning of this podcast when I was talking about space warping and stuff like that. It's really really interesting stuff. So I don't know. What other questions do folks have? Nothing. See if there's anything else I can talk about. Tell you what, the Morehouse episode's on fire though. It's doing well. Yeah, in terms of like what I covered, Moonman had me like give an entire outline of the novel that I just finished first draft of, which is about a crash retrieval program. Of course, whenever I start writing something, which I did a year and a half ago, it becomes true. So that's unfortunate. Um, I don't want to say yet because I haven't. Like I was supposed to interview him over this. I don't want it to be like a Gary Nolan situation, but he is. He's a bit of a gadfly, right? Some have called him a malignant narcissist, but if you were as smart as this guy was, and you've been saying the same thing for like 50 years and nobody's listening to you, and then UAPs show up and they're exhibiting all the characteristics that your theory predicts, you would be a gadfly too. You'd be like, you are idiots. Although I think the thing that's slowing us up is not necessarily the physics of the propulsion. I think it's more we don't have the metamaterials, or we don't understand the metamaterials enough. Our materials science has not progressed to the point where we can um, kind of reproduce these craft. So I think, and his view is that um, the propulsion system works is behind a craft you create an anti-gravitic field, and then what that does is that expands space time behind you. Then gravity expands, a gravity field expands space time ahead of you, or not expands, compresses space time ahead of you. And so in other words, brings your target closer to you, and you don't feel those gravitational effects if you're in that warp bubble that, when you see these UAPs traveling, the speeds they're traveling, people are like, oh, gravity would crush them. Well, gravity and anti-gravity net each other out. But in order to be able to do this, you need metamaterials that are established at the quantum scale and then managed by a semi-conscious or conscious AI in order to, exhibit the characteristics that you need. And there's also, you also need the dielectric to be a certain way so that you can produce the right electric field, and then perpendicular to that you also need, so there's something to do with the permittivity of the dielectric that the electric field travels along, so that you can have like a clear direction, and then the permeability of the magnetic field, so that you can manipulate that as well. And in order to do that, you need these metamaterials. So, and physicists kind of have the theory, right? But they don't. How do you do that? Well, it's probably a non-trivial problem. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, neither of those two. Yeah, I mean, AI would be smart enough to do it like humans are. It's too much. You're talking about manipulating individual atoms in these metamaterials to exhibit these uh, exotic characteristics. You have to design them in very specific ways. So at least that, so the theory says. It also explains why people who are underneath craft have like these ionizing radiation wounds and things like that, because the anti-gravity is counteracting like the Earth's gravity, but you don't have like a gravitational field in front of it because you don't need to produce one. You only need the anti-gravity, and the anti-gravity, you have like a real and imaginary, like when you're doing the math, there's like a real component and imaginary component. It's almost just like RLC circuits, right? Where you don't have resistance, but you have impedance, because there's a, again, this is like when you're dealing with phasers as an electrical engineer, it's one of the things that you either model with complex math, i.e., you're dealing with like the square root of -1. Imagine that's what by imaginary. It's kind of similar in this warp field physics that that theoretical physicists are throwing around. Again, I'm no expert. I've this professor had me read a book before he would talk, and then I sent him a bunch of questions, and he's like, the questions are answered in the book. I'm like, I know, but my audience didn't read the book. So I have to answer the questions I was going to ask him, because he asked me to send him the questions, and then we would do the interview. So I hope that works. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So if it just hovers over, you have an anti-gravity that's sending out this ionizing radiation. It also explains a lot of the health effects that are happening to people who are near UAPs. Like, I think it could be like what happened to Travis Walton, right? He may have gotten too close, and this ionizing radiation may have screwed him up, and the ETs abducted him because they had to fix him. So who knows? Well, that's the other thing too. Like, they also, the patterns that they have also, there's some sort of resonant frequency that's causing them too. I think it's called like somatics. It's like a whole field of how vibrations cause very distinct patterns. And like an ohm, like the ohm sound has a very specific pattern if you like model it in some medium. If I'm trying to think of an example, like if you put like cinnamon on a plate and you like direct sound at it, it'll form into like these very distinct mathematical patterns. All right, I hope I didn't like confuse people, because I'm still confused myself about the permittivity of the of the electric field in the dielectric, and then the permeability in for the magnetic field. Yeah, there is an element because you're bending space time with this like gravity and anti-gravity. So there is some component of, by definition, there's some time component. So there's a window at which the craft appears to disappear for the observer outside, outside the craft, but inside the craft they can see perfectly fine. So, but it's an element of bending space-time, which causes this effect, right? They're not really like zip zapping; they're just compressing the space in front of them and expanding the space behind them, and it just makes them, look like they're doing all these crazy things when they're really not. For their inertial frame or their frame of reference, they're hardly moving at all. Anyway, I'm trying to learn this stuff as rapidly as possible. I have like 14 things just like going on at the same time. So I'm like constantly trying to get up to speed, but also like I'm writing a book. I'm, grading assignments for a local business school. I'm building financial models for various startups. Like I'm just, that's kind of, I have multiple day jobs, which it's actually better than not having a single full-time job, but you got to hustle. You got to do like a lot of this stuff. And hopefully I'm able to do it long enough so that this channel starts to, and again, it's moving at a pretty good pace. Like we'll probably, I'm hoping we'll probably hit 2,000 by the end of this month. We should. But 10,000 by the end of the year, and then the year after that, try to get to between 50 and 100,000, and then once that happens, you start to get sponsorships and things like that. That I can do more of this, and then I can start. If I ever get to 1 million, you start hiring staff, and I can start doing more of this stuff, and improving quality and all that stuff. But it's gonna take a while. So there's a book by Grant Cameron called UFO Sky Pilots, and it goes into this. And the answer is, I don't know about any sentient being, but humans certainly, right? Because your conscience, or according to some people who report this, and people who have claimed to have done this, their consciousness, and in this particular type of machine, their consciousness merges with the consciousness of the ship, because the ship does have a consciousness apparently. And and there's like, that's the positive way to describe it. The dark way to describe it is something that Whitley Strieber came up called soul machines, which sounds a little bit more nefarious, but I think that's kind of the principle by how that AI or conscious AI works. Yeah, but again, I want to have high quality too. So if you look at the time that people watch my videos, it's far higher than like a normal attention span for YouTube. And part of the reason is it's got good quality. Like you're not hearing people say, at least a lot of like, or repeating themselves or something like that. Like I really go through. I have editing software that helps me, but it crashes a lot, and that's what causes a lot of the timing. It's amazing technology, and it worked really well in the beginning, but for some reason it's been crapping out recently and just taking a ton of time. So let's see. But yeah, there's going to be a ton of other stuff I have to do on the other side of this. But does anybody want to cover anything, or should I just kind of call it a night? I think 2 hours is pretty pretty good, and it seems like it's Folks don't have a lot of questions. Even though I described very badly, I might add, how anti-gravity works and gravity and warp field, warp propulsion. And that's not Alcubierre. It's not the Alcubierre drive like that. It's similar to it, but I think there's some slight difference around it. But the math is not like I don't think it's like super complicated. I'm sure physicists will use tensors and things like that I don't quite understand. But let's see. All right. Yeah, I think I am going to call it a night. Get some other stuff, done. So at least let me pull up. I like ending on a certain note in terms of getting everything all nice and clean when I leave, playing some music, that sort of thing. So with that, good night, everyone, and thanks for showing up. And hopefully it'll be more. I did this like a week early too. I generally do it in the next week, but I have some other stuff I have to get done, or some other place I have to be. Actually, Frank, I have to be down in somewhere near you. I have to go down to LA next week for 2 days. So for like a client. So I had to do this a week early, which is why I probably don't have as much as I generally like to have. So let's listen to everything else. Yeah, it's actually starting to do that. Actually, I'm starting to finally see it a little bit. Like it's happening today with the Morehouse interview. Like the YouTube is starting to furnish impressions. It was like after like a year and a half, but still. Anyway, all right. I think. Oh, I didn't even realize I thought it was Frank. Kid rocks. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it eventually will pick it up. So, all right, I'm definitely gonna call it a night. So, let me. I don't know why this is taking me so long to find, but all right. Good night, everyone.